Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would talk about all of the books that I read in February and March. In total I read 8 books. I read 3 books in February and 5 in March, which is insane. 3 of the books I read on a physical copy and the rest I read on my Kindle, so I'll probably put on the screen the book that I read and the rating. Let's start off with the book that I read in February. So the first book I read in February was The No-Show, and I think in my previous video you saw me borrow this from the library, so I did read it on a physical copy from the library, but I already returned it. I rated this book 4 stars. So The No-Show follows the story of 3 women who are stood up by the same man on Valentine's Day. At first the book was a bit hard to get into. I don't really remember why, but I have it written down in my book journal. I have my book journal here to help me remember, because low-key I'm forgetting right now, so these reviews are gonna be so bad. I wouldn't say it's a mystery, but it has that mystery element of like, you're wondering what happened. Like, why did this man stand up 3 women on Valentine's Day? I really liked the characters. They were all so different. I really felt for each of the women, except for one of them. I don't know, I couldn't really relate to her, but you figure out why he stood them up, and there was a little plot twist in the book which I didn't see coming, and I really enjoyed that. I will say some of the chapters were a bit long. I also did listen to some of it on audiobook, which I did enjoy. I definitely recommend it for anyone who's looking for like a women's fiction book. It does have like a touch of romance and a touch of like mystery, but overall you're kind of following these women's lives, and it's very thought-provoking. It gets a bit sad, but it's a beautiful story. Definitely recommend. The second book I read in February was The Wingman by Stephanie Archer. I also read this on my Kindle, so here it is for your viewing. The Wingman follows Hayden and Darcy. Darcy just came out of a long-term relationship, and she and Hayden are like best friends. They strike up a deal where Darcy learns how to be a player from Hayden, because Hayden is like got that player archetype to him, and she thinks that Hayden will help her get into the dating field and in turn discover herself more as a person and see what she likes in a relationship. So yeah, it is a friends to lovers trope. I did like how goofy their friendship was, and I did like her character growth and how she learned to love herself and find things about herself that she didn't know she liked. But other than that, it wasn't anything spectacular. I recommend it if you want something easy to read and just like a quick palate cleanser book, I think. Do keep in mind it is a bit spicy, so yeah. The third book that I read in February was Really Good Actually by Monica Hasey, and I rated this book 3.5 stars. I read this book on a physical copy as well. I borrowed it from the library, so I don't have it here with me, and I also did listen to it on audiobook. By the way, the library has really good resources for audiobooks. I definitely recommend using that. And Spotify, in case you have a Spotify premium. Use your reading hours on that. Really Good actually follows Maggie, who is a recent divorcee, and you kind of just follow her life, see her navigate the divorce, and you kind of watch her start over again, I guess. There wasn't really much of a plot from memory. I think it was mostly like her day-to-day life. You see how she slowly changes, you see her habits that she's kind of falling into over and over again, and all the things that she does to grow out of that and essentially just grow in general. Overall, I thought it was a very thought-provoking read. It definitely explored like relationships, self-discovery, the importance of friendships, the importance of self-love, and I think the overarching theme was starting over and what it's like to feel like you've hit rock bottom and you kind of have to start life over, and then feeling like you're behind. It was a bit hard because you have like really long chapters and then like really short chapters, which kind of like talked about like the things that she searched up on Google, which was interesting. The writing was like very rambly and very inner monologue-y. You can tell she's an unreliable narrator, and she like is so annoying sometimes, but it's funny because you can see parts of yourself in her, and it's really easy to relate to her, and you really see how human she is. Honestly, I don't really remember where she ended up, but I think she ended up in a better place. So those were the 3 books in February. It was kind of like a reading month. Definitely relied a lot on audiobooks, so I still enjoyed the books that I read, and I would recommend it to everyone. But March, let's get into March because I can remember those books better. I'm so sorry. All of the books that I talked about in February, I feel like I did a really horrible job at explaining them to you and articulating my thoughts on those books, but I feel like I can do a better job in March. So I read 5 books in March. I have 3 of those 5 books in my hand right now, and I will talk about them in order. The other 2 I read on my Kindle. The first 2 books I read in March I actually read like at the same time, which I don't normally do that. I don't know why I chose to do that. I think it's because one book was a bit scarier than the other, and I wanted another book to kind of be an easy book to read at nighttime kind of book, and I read that one on my Kindle. Don't know if that makes any sense, but the first book I read in the month of March was Love Her Madly by Elizabeth Lee. I rated this book 3.5 stars. So Love Her Madly is about Glow, Sin, and Raj, but particularly Glow and Sin. And the book is written in the perspective of Gloria, who becomes best friends with Sin, and they aren't the kind of friends that you would picture to be best friends, if that makes sense. Like, they're so different, but they were so enamored by one another that they became best friends in college, and they were kind of like inseparable, and I think they were very infatuated with one another. That's just my opinion. Sin and Glow end up falling for the same guy, and they strike up a deal to date him at the same time. So they're both in a relationship with this one guy named Raj. So yeah, they essentially share Raj, and you kind of just follow that dynamic. And then suddenly Sin goes missing, so you kind of see how that happens. The plot, as you can tell, was very, very interesting, and it was very thrilling at times. I kept thinking about the book, like I wanted to know more. And then there's also the other mystery of what happened to Sin. Why did she go missing? What then happened to Glow and Raj? So yeah, you kind of follow that. The book is in 2 parts. One part is them in college, and you see them become best friends, fall for the same guy. And in the second half, that's when Sin has gone missing, and you kind of see how Glow is navigating life after Sin's disappearance. I definitely recommend the book. The characters were very, very, very interesting, and not your typical characters, and they really intrigued me. What intrigued me more was their dynamic, like Sin and Glow's dynamic, and then Sin and Raj's dynamic, and Glow and Raj's dynamic, and then all of their dynamic. I found it to be a very riveting read, despite them being such unreliable narrators of the story, and you never really can trust anyone. I will say I liked the first half of the book way more than the second half. I wish we kind of had just the first half of the book and more of the first half of the book. The plot kind of fell through on the second half, like it felt a bit like out of this world, like kind of like Delulu, like this is not really working. But yeah, the ending was a bit disappointing in some ways in terms of plot, but I still do think it carried that same essence throughout the entire book of like the uncanniness of their dynamic. So that was Love Her Madly, 3.5 stars, recommended to anyone who likes those weird kind of things. The second book that I read in the month of March was The Mistake by Elle Kennedy, and I think this is the second book in the Off-Campus series. I think that's what the series is called. I read this on my Kindle the same time I read Love Her Madly, and I would pick this up at nighttime because this would low-key freak me out. Once again, another hockey romance. So in The Mistake, you follow Logan and Grace, who kind of like hook up at the start of the book, and then it kind of like falls through, and you kind of see them come back together and navigate that. So it's kind of like a second chance kind of romance. So yeah, Logan and Grace meet, and they have this encounter with one another, and it just goes wrong. But then you kind of see Logan try to rekindle it and make up for it, and you see Grace trying to go between that back and forth of like not wanting anything to do with him, but also wanting to give him another chance. I really liked their dynamic. I thought they were really good friends. I really liked that aspect of their relationship. Like, I enjoyed their friendship. I think I was more interested in Logan's plotline and what was going on with his family, which you'll find out in the book, compared to what was going on with Grace and her friendships, which you'll find out in the book. It did feel a bit fast-paced, to the point where I thought we were getting to like a climax in the book, but then it just ended. Like, something happened at the end and I was like, oh my gosh, we're getting somewhere, and then boom, next page is epilogue. So I guess I just got really invested in the characters and their lives. It was a bit spicy, keep that in mind. But other than that, it was a pretty easy read. The third book I read in March was Today, Tonight, Tomorrow by Rachel Lynn Solomon. And in this book, you follow academic rivals Rowan and Neil, who their whole high school lives have been going against each other to be like the best of the best in a school and to be like valedictorian and all of that. And it is their last day of high school ever. Their school has this tradition called, I think it's called Howl, where the juniors set up like this game for the seniors, and it's kind of like assassin and a scavenger hunt at the same time for the cash prize of $5,000. Which I'm like, what kind of school has that kind of budget? And Rowan made like this list of all of the things that she wants to accomplish in high school, and she realizes that she kind of didn't really accomplish anything on that list, and so she's determined to complete that list, one of them being to take down Neil, her academic rival. Hey guys, it's future Kirill here. I'm currently editing this video that you're watching. I was watching the video and I'm listening to myself and I'm like, girl, you're literally making no sense right now. So I thought I would clarify what I mean when I say I didn't really like Rowan. I think I just felt confused by her character because I feel like there was so much going on in the book as well. Like, she had problems going on with her friendship. She had this dynamic going on with Neil that was like changing. We had the Howl thing going on, and then we had her list thing going on. And then there's this whole thing about her identity as well. But I just feel like there was a lot of things going on that made it really hard for me to really picture who Rowan is. So I don't know. I don't know if that made any more sense. And also, I wish we had Neil's point of view. I think it would have been really interesting to have his point of view. I think I liked him more as a character. Maybe because he was a bit more mysterious. Maybe because we didn't know him as much. I'm sorry, I thought I would just include that. My thoughts on this book are all over the place, as well as every other book that I've talked about so far, so I'm so sorry. But yeah, that is all. Bye. This book covers the span of one day, which makes sense because it's called Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, but I wish there was a bit more. The pacing was a bit weird because again, it took place over the course of one day, but it felt like it kind of really jumped, which I don't blame the author because you're working with one day as your time frame. Some bits I don't know if you would include in a YA, and some things did feel a bit like, but yeah, it was fun. It was so easy and quick to read. My next read in March was my favorite read of March. Definitely one of my favorite books of the year and one of my most anticipated reads of the year. And of course I give it 5 stars. But I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I love this book. I love it so much. If you don't know anything about this world, if you don't know anything about these characters, if you don't know anything about the Hunger Games, what are you doing with your life? If you don't know anything about Sunrise on the Reaping, this is about the 50th Hunger Games, the second quarter quell, and you follow Haymitch. This book I found to be very reminiscent of the first Hunger Games book, and I think it's because you are back in the perspective of 16-year-old Haymitch, and he is reaped into the 50th Hunger Games. You see him navigate his life beforehand a bit, you see him preparing for the Hunger Games, and you see him entering the Hunger Games, dealing with the Hunger Games, and then coming out of the Hunger Games, which is not a spoiler if you know the series. This book literally like tore me apart, but also put me back together in terms of like bringing me back to this franchise, but also like such a sad story, so heart-wrenching. Like, I don't even know like how Suzanne Collins came up with this. Her brain is so, she is a genius. I don't get it. I feel like I've heard people talk about how they were nervous about Sunrise on the Reaping being like a fan service book, like a book just for the fans, and in some ways I do see that. In other ways I don't think it was just a fan service. I really do think Suzanne Collins hit the nail on the head when she was tackling themes about propaganda and like war theory, and I think it's just war theory. I think that's what she mostly surrounds these books on, but this one really definitely touched on the theme of propaganda and the dangers of like powerful people creating narratives and perpetuating these narratives and using it to create fear and chaos, and the harsh reality of people putting everything on the line to take down those kinds of powers and risking everything. Such a captivating read. Like, I literally could not put it down, and I wanted to keep finding out more, and I wanted to know more. Like, even though you know the 50th Hunger Games, you know what happens in the second quarter quell because of what you see, what Katniss sees in Catch and Fire, it does not amount to what you read in this book. And that is literally the epitome of what Suzanne Collins is trying to demonstrate and what she's trying to talk about and explore and ask questions about to her audience. I love Haymitch. I think he is such a misunderstood character. I'm grateful we have this book because the lore, she's such a genius. Like, everything she put into this book was so intentional, and everything that she wrote about had a purpose, had meaning, and it made sense tying it back to the original series as well as Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I think she rounded off everything really, really well. It's kind of sad because I feel like she put a bow on it and was like, I'm done. This is my last gift to you. Do with that what you will. And I recommend it to anyone and everyone because it's so easy to read, and sentences in the book that you think might be simple actually carry so much meaning and are so much deeper than you probably think. And I think she's such a clever genius writer. Like, the amount of things I underlined in that book is insane. But yeah, not only did she write an incredible book, I think she wrote a book that tied in with her previous books so seamlessly and so effortlessly and so meaningfully. I need to find a new word. I keep saying that. I just think it was so good, and I can't wait for the movie to come out. And I really hope they cast, I don't know his name, but the kid who plays Percy Jackson in the TV show, I hope they cast him as Haymitch, because he was who I had in my head when I was reading this book, picturing Haymitch. Definitely recommend Sunrise on the Reaping. Go read it if you haven't yet. You're missing out. Anyway, I rambled about that for way too long. The last book I read in the month of March was After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this one was really good. I don't know what I rate it yet. I think I'm gonna rate it like maybe 4.5. I really enjoyed it. I was very intrigued by it, and I couldn't put it down. I was constantly thinking about it, and it is such a page turner. It just didn't give me that 5-star feeling. In this book, you follow Lauren and Ryan, who have been married for a very, very long time and were college sweethearts. Is that a phrase? They met in college and they got married very young and have been married since, but they reach a point in their marriage where they're just constantly fighting. They hold a lot of resentment for one another, and they're very complacent with one another, lacking any passion or love for one another in the relationship. So they come to an agreement where they separate for 1 year, no contact, nothing. They meet up again in 1 year to decide what they want to do with their marriage. In this book, you are in the perspective of Lauren, so you don't get Ryan's perspective. You kind of follow Lauren navigate this new life of not being with Ryan, and her tackling whether or not she wants to save the marriage, or if the marriage is just completely ruined and there's no saving it. And you see her really prioritize herself and prioritize other relationships in her life other than her marriage, particularly her family. And I think that's what I really liked about this book. I think it really emphasized the importance of your individuality in a marriage and your relationship with your family. And she writes in such a clever way where it feels so like natural. Like, these people feel so real to me, and their dialogue felt so natural. This book is heavy on dialogue, which some people might not like, but I like that because it felt real. It felt normal. Like, it didn't feel like characters in a book. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes I feel like books have dialogue where it really feels like characters talking in a book, but this felt like real people talking in real life. It felt like you were watching a show and realizing things for yourself as the audience, being like, oh, this is what's happening in this character's head, blah 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 blah. So yeah, I liked that. Yeah, You essentially watch her navigate this new life, and you find out whether or not they get back together in the end. And I definitely recommend it for anyone who wants a book about relationships, marriage, what it is to love, what it's like to love, what it means to love, and how to continue loving someone forever and ever, and deciding what love means for yourself. But yeah, those were all the books that I read in the months of February and March. Let me know if you liked this video, if you liked hearing about all of the books that I'm reading, my thoughts on these books. I'm so sorry, my thoughts are all over the place with these books. When I read a book, I will enjoy it, and then I will erase it from my mind unintentionally, and that is why I have my book journal with me, to keep me from forgetting them, but I will forget them anyway. I hope you found a book that you are interested in and you might enjoy, and if you've read any of these books, let me know. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye, love you.